Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Glenn Pierce. I'm the Vice President Medical for the World Federation of Hemophilia. And welcome to the third webinar in a series on shared decision-making. In our first two webinars in this series, in February and earlier in March, we heard from Drs. Barbara Konkle and Steve Pipe on both the efficacy as well as safety of a variety of classes of different products. And they went through in detail how one evaluates both efficacy as well as safety. And what one needs to consider is they think about the products that are available to them in their geographies. What we'll hear today is more of a discussion. If you can move to the next slide, please. Yeah. Hello again. We'll hear more of a discussion on the actual shared decision-making process, what the benefits are for both the healthcare teams as well as the people with hemophilia, and then get into a discussion with all of our panel members, all of our speakers from the previous two webinars. The new people that are going to be speaking today are Donna Coffin, who is the Director of Research and Education at the World Federation of Hemophilia. She joined in 2016 and has established both the research and the education department, and has really had a focus on developing and implementing the World Bleeding Disorders Registry, the Gene Therapy Registry, and has been active in the development of many of our educational materials. And so she also has been one of the key members in developing the WFH Shared Decision-Making Tool. Our next speaker is going to be Sara Garcia Barcenilla, and Sara joined the hemostasis unit of La Paz University Hospital as a clinical trials nurse in Madrid, Spain, back in 2014, 10 years ago. And she coordinates and performs nursing procedures in various clinical studies, mainly focused in hemophilia and other bleeding disorders. And then our third speaker is well known to us, Mariette Driessens. And Mariette is a carrier of hemophilia B, and she's trained as a medical biologist and has worked previously both in research and in pharma. She's now working part-time as a policy advisor at the Dutch National Rare Disease Patient Organization, and on Fridays is at the Dutch Hemophilia Society working on hemophilia youth support projects. So I'd like to welcome all three of our new speakers, and let's move on to the rest of the agenda. Next slide, please. So I'll turn it over to Donna to begin to talk about the decision-making tool itself.
Great. Thank you very much, Glenn. I'm just going to share my screen. Julia, this is good?
Yes, looks good.
Perfect. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the third of three webinars on shared decision-making. So as Glenn mentioned, the first two webinars were focused on the treatment products available for hemophilia, overviewing the safety, the efficacy, and the administration. And from those webinars, we saw really how complex the treatment landscape for hemophilia has become, and it will continue to get more complex, which is really where the shared decision-making tool idea stemmed from. So as gene therapy was kind of coming closer and closer to be available for patients, the community began to understand how complex it is going to be for patients and healthcare providers to make decisions on what the best treatment option is for each individual patient, which is how we came to develop the shared decision-making tool. So I'm going to go through what the tool is. So a little bit about what shared decision-making is, the concept, and then I'll go into the tool and give you a glimpse of it. So just to start off, we put together a working group who worked over several years to develop what we now have as the WFH shared decision-making tool. So the working group consisted of Declan Noon, Brendan Hayes from the NBDF, Mark Skinner, Thomas Sanier, Courtney Thornburg, who is a physician, hematologist in the United States, and Glenn Pierce, as well as staff, myself, Julia, who is very involved in it, and Mace. We worked with an external consultant on the data and the evidence piece, and we also worked with a medical education agency who actually developed the platform itself. And of course, I want to thank our supporters of the tool, which really allowed us to develop the entire tool, whose names are here on the bottom of the screen. So a little bit about shared decision making. So what is shared decision making? It is a process. So it's not a one-time event. It really is a process in which healthcare teams and people with hemophilia work together to make treatment decisions based on clinical evidence that balances the risks and the benefits of each treatment option with patient preferences and patient values in mind. What is the WF SDM tool? So it's an interactive web-based platform, and it's designed to guide patients and their healthcare teams through this process of making an informed, which is where the education comes in, and shared treatment decision. It provides users with the tools and the knowledge to be part of that complicated discussion. So this is what we developed it for, was for this area for patients and healthcare providers. However, it can also be used as an advocacy tool for decision makers in healthcare settings. So for instance, treatment selection in a formulary needs to be based on evidence and information on all the different treatment options, and for advocates who are looking to expand access to different treatments. So the tool, as you'll see as I go through it, can be useful source of unbiased and balanced education and information to inform advocacy initiatives. What are the benefits of using shared decision-making concept for healthcare providers? So there's quite a bit of research in this area within hemophilia and outside of hemophilia. So we know that bringing patients into the discussion, so having that shared discussion between treatments and healthcare providers on treatment options, builds patient trust, rapport, and confidence. So patients, if they're part of the discussion, are more likely to trust their physicians who bring them into that decision. There's an alignment of treatment plans and patient values. So bringing in patients allows healthcare providers to better understand patient preferences in terms of treatments and their values. And it ensures that the chosen treatment plan aligns with patient lifestyle and goals. It prevents miscommunication and misunderstanding of treatments. It's an efficient use of healthcare resources. So bringing the patient in to the decision allows patients to choose treatment options that align with the preferences and values, and they're more likely to be adherent and not kind of waste healthcare resources. And of course, professional satisfaction of having that meaningful discussion with patients. The benefit for patients, it improves satisfaction. So we know that when patients are actively engaged in decisions about their care, they report higher levels of satisfaction with the overall healthcare experience. It enhances their understanding of the different treatment options, leading to increased adherence. So they have a better ownership of their treatment plan. They're more likely to stick to it. And this results in improved health outcomes overall. So there's lots of benefits of incorporating shared decision-making into the discussions. There's also benefits of using the WFH SDM tool for advocacy purposes. All of the information and the data that is in the SDM tool is unbiased, it's balanced, and it is based on evidence from the prescribing information of each of the treatments. There is a easy to use comparative table where you can look at different attributes between the treatment options, and it allows advocates to have really a full understanding of all the treatment options. So I'm going to go to the tool and do a mini demo. However, before I go there, I have a few things that I just want to communicate that you should know about the tool. So the first thing is the WFH shared decision-making tool will not tell the user which treatment option is best for them, but it will provide the users with the tools, the education, the reflective questions that will equip patients to be part of the decision-making process with the healthcare team. It does not mean that the patient decides by themselves what treatment is best. The decision is shared with healthcare teams. This version of the tool does not include on-demand treatment regimes, so it's based on the 5 main treatment classes for prophylaxis, which are clotting factor replacement therapy, SHL and EHL, bispecific antibodies, rebalancing agents, and gene therapy. And as I mentioned, it's evidence-based. It has up-to-date evidence on each treatment class, and it will be regularly updated every 6 months. Information comes from the prescribing information from the FDA or the EMA, and in some case, the phase 3 pivotal study results are used. So not everybody using this tool will have access to all 5 treatment classes. However, the tool is still useful so that people understand what's actually available and out there, even though they may not have access to them right now. They can then use the information to advocate for better treatment in their country. So here's the website of the shared decision-making tool. It's sdm.wfh.org. I will now go to it directly. So here's the landing page. If you go up here, you see sdm.wfh.org. So if you go to the website, this is the landing page. This is what you're going to see. So you can see here on the left-hand side is the navigation pane where we have a welcome. We have an introduction section, which talks about shared decision-making. We have a reflection section, which talks about patient preferences, values, goals, aspirations. We have an education section. We have a summary. So I will briefly go through each of the sections here. So the introduction section, it talks about what shared decision-making is, who this tool is for. I'm going to leave it for the users. You can go investigate this in more detail on afterwards. And then it has a little journey here. So this is a roadmap of a step-by-step guide for shared decision-making. So I'll just briefly go through all of the points that we have here. So the first thing is to reflect on your life goals and your current treatment. So the tool itself has questions surrounding this to help users think about things that might be important. And I'll show you what those questions are. Second point is to learn about all the treatment options, which is in the education part. So this helps users understand what the treatment options are available out there. And then number 3 is you can compare the different treatment options. So what is the risk of one versus the other? What is the efficacy of one versus the other? And then once you kind of have the first layer of information and education, you can start having conversation with other people. So you could talk with your family, your friends, your peers, your patient organization, your caregivers, and your physicians. Then you prepare your visit with your healthcare provider. So now you're kind of armed with education. You've thought about things. Go have your visit with your physician. You have open and meaningful conversations with your healthcare team. So whoever that may be, maybe it's your physician, maybe it's the nurses, maybe it's the social worker. It depends on how your HTC is set up. And then take time to consider your options. So you don't necessarily need to make the decision that day. You can go back, take the time to think about it, go back to the education, continue your learning process, and then go back to your healthcare team and make a decision. So if we continue here, so now at this point, we enter the tool. So this is where you actually go into the stream of Hem A or Hem B. So I'll just choose Hem A here. And this brings you to the reflection questions that I was talking about. So this allows the user to, by the way, none of the information that is put into the tool is saved or, saved on the computer, but it does end up in a summary at the end that you can print and bring to your healthcare provider. So how would you describe the impact of your hemophilia on obtaining your life goals? So you can just enter your responses here, your thoughts, whatever you're thinking about in terms of this question. And again, why are you considering a change to your therapy? And you can answer your questions here. So these questions are meant to allow the patient to start thinking about things, number one, and then write down their thoughts so that they can share them with their healthcare providers if they choose to, which will give the healthcare providers just a glimpse into how the patient is thinking, what their values are, what they want in terms of treatment. We then go to the next page, which is a series of 8 questions. So these are questions aimed at getting the patient to think about their current treatment, how they feel about their hemophilia, what they're looking for in treatment. And they will respond to each of these questions with the scale between 0 and 100. So I feel tied to or constrained by my hemophilia treatment regime. So they'll move this along the, sorry, my computer is not working very well, but this does actually work on so they'll put it here, wherever they feel they fall between not at all and very much. And then the same thing for each of these questions. Managing my hemophilia takes a lot of effort. My hemophilia is always in the back of my mind. I think about it all the time. I feel adequately protected against bleeds, yes or no. So these are answered. And again, they end up at the end on that patient summary page. I won't continue. You'll see them at the end. So then we'll carry on here. So now we get into the education portion. So here, as I mentioned before, we are focusing on the 5 main treatment classes. So standard half-life, extended half-life, gene therapy, specific antibodies, hemostatic rebalancing therapies. So each of these has a video. So you can see the little video here. If you click on here, which I won't now, there's a short video explaining mainly the mechanism of action, the administration of each of the treatments, and each one has a PDF fact sheet. I'll just click on one. You can save this to your computer, you can download it, you can print it. Essentially, this is much more information. It's a detailed account of each of the different treatment classes, going through a series of questions about mechanism of action, treatment, efficacy, safety, monitoring. So as I mentioned, each one. So users should spend a lot of time here investigating, learning about each of the treatment options. And then if we continue, now we come to the attribute table. So this is a table where we have each of the treatment options down here, and we have a series of attributes that were deemed to be important. And each of these can be clicked on, and then you can quickly be able to compare each of these between the 5 treatment options. So approved population, for instance, you can see very quickly that we're pretty much the same. Gene therapy is only for adults. At this point, bispecific antibody therapy is for all ages with and without inhibitors. And this gets updated as we get more information. Administration, you can see, what the administration rate is like, how frequent are infusions, the efficacy, the annual bleed rate differences. So there's really not a huge lot of difference in terms of annual bleed rate between the treatment options. And then factor level, if you click on here, you get a bigger visual of what the factor level graph looks like. And in the little videos, we have these in a little bit more detail. And then the potential safety risks. So we've chosen 4 safety risks that we've put out for each of the treatment options here. And then quality of life, we are using the concept of hemophilia-free mind. So you can see standard half-life, hemophilia-free mind. The mind is quite cluttered with worries about many different aspects of hemophilia: travel, employment, injection schedule, medication, physical activity. And then as you get into the newer products, which have less treatment burden, the number of red concerns changes. Some are now yellow, which means they're occasional concerns, and some are actually green, which are little to no concern. And then all the way down to gene therapy, which has, I guess, the highest number of green concerns. So it's a nice visual way to kind of look at quality of life. If you're going through this and you're like, well, I'm really interested, I'm currently on standard half-life, I'm really interested in moving over to bispecific antibody, and these are the treatments that I'd like to discuss with my physician, you can click on these 2 and they will end up on the PDF at the end, which I'm going to go to. So the last series of questions are proposed questions which you may want to discuss with your healthcare team. So if any of these questions are something that you want to discuss, which specific products are available to me, what is the process, what will happen, click on them, and again, they'll end up in that PDF, so you don't have to write down things in a booklet about what you want to talk about. You can just bring them over to the PDF. So I will go to the personalized summary. So this is a summary of everything the user just put into the tool. So if you remember, there was questions for reflection, and the responses will be here. So if the user decides that they want to send this to their physician, which they easily can, they can download it here, print it, and even email it to them, their physician or their healthcare team can see what their responses were to the questions as well. So I didn't answer all of them, but you can see where each of the questions ranked between 2 extremes of not at all, very much. So this will provide more information to the healthcare team of how the patient is feeling about things about their hemophilia. And then if you remember, we chose standard half-life factor therapy. So this is a summary of the eligibility, the administration, efficacy, safety, and the quality of life of standard half-life versus bispecific antibodies, because these were the 2 that we were interested in. And then questions for the healthcare team. And the user can click here, download the PDF summary, and send it to their healthcare team, print it and bring it. So that's a really quick summary of a quick view of the WFH SDM tool. And I invite you to go to the website, check it out, play with it, learn about the different treatment options. So that's it for my presentation. Thank you very much. I'm now going to hand it over to Sara.
Thanks, Donna.
Thank you, Sara.
I'm trying to share screen. I'm sorry. Can you see
Yep,
it?
it's perfect.
Everything is okay? Yeah. Thank you. So, well, thanks for your kind introduction. Also, thanks for letting me to be here. When I began prepare this session, I realized that it was a challenge because perhaps it's difficult to approach to the concept of shared decision making, because sometimes as healthcare providers, we can feel that it is something that we were already doing. So in my experience, I have seen hematologists explaining pharmacokinetic parameters on personalized curves using it as visual aids, or physiatrists reviewing ultrasounds together with the patient, explaining the pathophysiology of joint damage, and also complex multidisciplinary consultations evaluating all therapeutic options in case of severe musculoskeletal damage. So for me, I work in clinical trials, so can be some kind of similarities comparing clinical trial with the decision-making process, because prior to screening and the decision of participating, we explain the mechanism of action of the molecule, the risk and benefits, previous data, visits, procedures per visit. And then we have this first checkpoint. We stop and ask them, as the patient or caregiver, if they want to continue. If they say no, the routine medical assistance carried by the center will be take place. But if the answer is yes, we are going to move to the next step. If they say yes, okay, I'm pretty fine with that. I want to participate and continue the process. Then we provide deeper information and offer the patient information sheet and informed consent. We give it in a tangible way in a paper so they can take it home and meditate on it with their family, friends, or whoever they want. We also allow time to encourage reflection. We allow time to pass to make this reflection effective. And then when we see them in the consultation, we ask again for doubts, comments, perceptions, and we ask again if they still want to participate. So if it's no, the routine medical assistance will be taking place, and if it's yes, we just continue. So clinical trials follow these steps as it is required by clinical good practice and all the legislation itself. But this way of working allows us to sequence a decision as important as participation in a clinical trial. In a similar way, the shared decision tool of the World WFH allows these steps to be sequenced and serves as a reference in the process, because they help us to structure the information and serves as a visual aid. Also, I think that ensure this feedback like in clinical trials. But this way of work is not something new, because in 2003 in France was published an article that linked the blood infection crisis to a change in medical care models. The group of authors reviewed data obtained from 31 interviews with people with hemophilia and families, and interviews for 31 clinicians. And it concludes that after the crisis, the doctors, the clinician, rethought the model that they had carried out, because they found that they were sharing knowledge among themselves. And I think, and it's very, very important, the author concludes that there is a change in what is shared. It's not the emergence of a sharing zone. And 16 years later, in the Netherlands, a systematic review of 30 articles on shared decision-making models, 12 of them were generic. What was seen is that two elements are common to all models. First is they recognize the shared decision-making process as an explicit effort carried out by two experts. One expert is the people with hemophilia or caregiver, and the second expert is the healthcare provider. And secondly, they saw the effort to provide relevant information based on evidence, which is also an advantage of using this way of working, because it requires us to remain updated and training, because we need to be able to offer this information to patients and families. We can do that using this continuous training, the attendance of Congress meetings, to exchange the scientific knowledge up to date in real more basis. So the benefits that have been published, we can discuss later in the panel discussion, my opinion, but the things that are published is that this way of work, the shared decision-making process, promotes equity, increased patient participation in the disease process, and also the adherence, increased knowledge of the patient goals, and that's very, very important for us because, well, I think it's my opinion at the end, but when the more information that we have, the more things we can do to help to ensure help to the person and help in the process. So it also allows us to learn more about the person that we have in front that we are caring for, and for us to continue training and updating knowledge based on evidence. And I think that this is such a very important advantage of this kind of work. So that's all. That's my talk. Thanks again for inviting me and letting me be here. And let's discuss later in the panel discussion. Now it's turn to Mariette.
Yes, thank you. So thanks for sharing my slides. Thanks to the WFH for the invitation. I've been working on the WFH shared decision-making tool in the context of the Hemophilia Youth Support activity of the Dutch Hemophilia Society. Next slide, please. So what is the goal of this activity? It's to inform young adults on the novel treatments. And why did we choose this group? This is, of course, when they turn 18. For instance, gene therapy will become available. And well, elements of the project are as well that we would like to focus on people with low health literacy. And in our country, we mean by this like populations like migrants or people with low education. And the other thing, the other condition was, let's not reinvent the wheel and make use of what is already out there. So I was very happy to see the shared decision-making tool of the WFH. And a bit more about literacy. There are kind of 4 types of literacy involved in the use of this tool, I would say. It's like the general literacy. How are you able to what is your level of reading or writing? Digital literacy. Are you good at using the computer or smartphone? Really health literacy and information literacy. Can you grasp things like side effects or treatment schedule? These kind of things. So next slide, please. I'll come back to that. So in autumn of last year, the WFH shared decision-making tool was published. At that time, it was available in English, French, and Spanish, I think. And yeah, I was very enthusiastic to see it. And I asked the WFH if we could work together to prepare Dutch translations. Next slide, please. So why was I enthusiastic about this tool? Because it really contained the goal setting and the reflection. It really was complete in that it shows all classes and types of medication. It had both education leaflets, but also videos, so spoken and visual information. I found it very interesting to see the icons to convey certain characteristics. So for the icons from the hemophilia free mind. Yeah, of course, we think if we provide patients with complete information, make them reflect, I think this really works well in treatment decisions and will improve in the end the quality of life. So I requested for translations from English into Dutch. And well, Dutch is a language that is spoken in the Netherlands, but also in our neighbors down south in Belgium. So I decided to reach out to our colleagues of the Belgian Hemophilia Society to work together and evaluate the translations. And I also will work with a group of young adults, of which I showed the picture previously. Yes, next slide. So when you go implementing such a tool in a national, well, in a country, there is the environment of what is already out there on shared decision making. And there have been several campaigns in the Netherlands, so it's really high on the agenda of policymakers, doctors, and patients. What are my possibilities? What are the pros and cons of those possibilities? What does it mean for me? So we have examples of decision aids, but we do not have such interactive ones like the WFH shared decision making tool. So I think it's very interesting to work on it. Next slide. And of course, in this project, we are working on with young adults. And in the Netherlands, there is now also a reflection tool which is gaining a lot of attention. And this is a tool made by Machtel Hubert in the Institute of Positive Health. And it has this spider web. And you have like, I think, 45 questions for goal setting and reflection. So a bit more than the 10 questions in the WFH tool. And you get this spider web, and some of you might be familiar with it in the ICHOM core outcome sets. And what I also wanted to show is the body map, and this is maybe a tool also. It enables the patients to show what is important to him in a consultation with the doctor. And you can make it with a chatbot asking you questions, and it's really directed to young people. For instance, you discuss important people for you, what is difficult in your treatment, what do you skip, how do you perform self-management, how does it impact your body, so what are symptoms that you still experience. So there are all kinds of reflections tools, of course, which might be more better for young people. I don't know. Let's see. Next slide. I wanted to come back as well to the general literacy and that we really need to work on to make medical information understandable. So in Europe, we have a common framework of reference for languages, and this concerns with learning, teaching, and assessment. And there are in the axis you see simple language, it's A1, and difficult language, it's C2. And for the medical information and also for the translations that I received into Dutch, I'm aiming at a level of B1, which means that at least 80% of the population will easily understand this language. So next slide, please. So what helps in the process of evaluating the Dutch translations? It's of course that we would like to see the Dutch product information, and this becomes available when a product receives a marketing authorization in the European Union. And this is not the case yet for all products that are mentioned in the tool, but in a couple of months that will be the case, I think. So of course, this tool needs to be implemented in the normal care. So recently I asked the medical specialists and the nurse specialist to, I asked them, how will you be involved? Will you be involved in the translations, or how shall we proceed together? And they told me that they would like to test the tool in 2 out of the 6 comprehensive care centers in the Netherlands, and then work on an implementation strategy to have implemented in the care pathway and the patient journey, so that when people, for instance, turn 18, they get offered this tool. We will also promote it via the Patient Society, and we have a registry for hemophilia and other bleeding disorders called HemoNet, and there we can also provide a link to the tool. The next slide, please. And of course, we were thinking together with the young adults as well to make some extras, so like derived materials from the tools for people with low health literacy. For instance, explainer videos on certain topics. And the youth, they were thinking of making their own testimonials and vlogs on the use of the tool, so little films where they show how to use it. And they also wanted to share tips and tricks on reducing the number of bleeds and the risks. So I'm doing this work. We made a WhatsApp group of the young adults supporting me in this work. It's still work in progress. And at the end, I would like to acknowledge the help of Sylvester Giese. He's a bachelor student and he did an internship and he helped me with the startup of this. So thanks very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mariette. And thank you to all of our speakers. We have a number of questions for discussion on our panel in the last few minutes. And so I'd like to ask our panelists if they could give short answers to the questions so that we can get through them all. And I want to start with Donna, just about the mechanics of engaging in the shared decision-making tool. So Donna, can you tell me what languages it has been translated into and what is planned for the near future?
Yeah, so it's currently available in English, French, and Spanish. And we are currently working on the German, Dutch, and Japanese version. So as time goes on, we'll be expanding the translations, but that's what we have right now.
And if a country is interested in translating into their language, what are the steps that they would need to take?
So we're actually working very closely with Mariette on this. So WFH needs to actually do the translations because we have the platform and everything. So we will the country can get in touch with us and we'll go get into discussions of the translation. We will do the translation. We'll get the country, whoever we're working with, the NMO, to review the translation for a language point of view, and then we'll implement it from the back end.
Okay, thank you, Donna. I want to turn now to our panelists who have hemophilia, and that's Hazri, Enrique, Jay and Garrett, who have spoken on the last two webinars and given their perspectives on how they're managing their diseases. I would be very interested in getting their reaction to the presentations today on the basics of using the tool and how it may or may not help each of them in dealing with their individual goals in managing their disease. And so I don't have a particular order, but let me just start with Hazri.
Hi, hello everyone. Well, for me, I think it has helped me in three ways. I think it definitely helped me to initiate conversation with about management of hemophilia with my peers. To better understand which treatment is that suits them, and in that turn, how it can help me as well in crafting my treatment options. And number two is I think what I like about the tool is it provides me with suggested questions, which are super helpful in initiating conversation with my doctors. And third, which I also enjoy is that there are videos about the treatment that's available that help me understand about it better, as opposed to reading, probably scientific documents or anything. It's simple enough for me to understand. So that's super useful.
Okay, thank you, Hazri. Enrique, what's your perspective?
Hi, Glenn. Well, I agree with Hazri. I believe, for example, for the part of advocating, that will be a really great tool. In my case, I used to think, and I also think some of the physicians here at Mexico used to think that there was only a way of being a person with hemophilia. That is what, like taking your treatment and trying to not doing sports or any activity at all. And like having the chance to look at the different options really helped you gain more perspective. So for the beginning, I wanted to do other kind of activities, but the idea that using only the on-demand option on even prophylaxis, but not a good prophylaxis, didn't give me like a chance to do like a lot of activities. So understanding that there are different opportunities that brings conversation with the first with me to understand that being a person with hemophilia can achieve like a lot of things, but then with the physician or with the doctors to talk about that. And I also agree on the part about reading and understanding more about the treatments in a comprehensive way. So yeah, that will be my answer, Glenn.
Okay, thank you, Enrique. Jay, what about you?
Yeah, so personally, I think the tool is superb, to tell you the truth, the way it's thought out. So congratulations to everybody. Nothing like that existed that I know about in any way when I was, through most of my lifetime. So what I like about it is it's like a single source location to get a lot of information on a lot of different things. And that in itself, I can see that if I had seen that a long time ago, would have maybe given me a more hopeful viewpoint of the future, because you can see from here the different avenues things are going, and the mention that it's updated every 6 months is, you feel like you're always getting the most accurate, up-to-date information. I didn't have the opportunity to let it help me in any way. But I can see that even when I was deciding about gene therapy, it would have prepared me better to ask questions where I had blind spots. Like I think I ended up figuring out stuff along the way, but it's kind of like the Rumsfeld, I didn't know what I didn't know. So this tool would really change that into things I know I don't know, and then I could read up on them. So I think it's really great device. Yeah.
Okay, that's a good analogy. Thank you. And Garrett, what about you?
Yeah, I totally agree with everyone else that's spoken so far. I think the tool is really great because as patients, I think we're kind of bombarded with a lot of scientific information about products, especially the newer products. And what I really like about this tool is it kind of recontextualizes treatment decisions in terms of what your actual goals are as a patient. And I think those conversations are often had when you're meeting with your healthcare provider, but for most people, they're not seeing their healthcare provider, but maybe once or twice a year. So I think this tool kind of allows you to be more of an active participant in your treatment decisions. It allows you to kind of put your treatment decision in the context of what your goals are, what your activity level is. And I think when you have a tool like that, it helps patients be a little more sure with the treatment decision that they're pursuing, which I think is a really powerful thing.
Okay, thanks, Garrett. I'm gonna ask our clinician experts, Barb and Sara, a question or two, but before I do that, I want to reinforce a couple of concepts that have emerged over these past couple of years within the bleeding disorders community. One has been discussed already in the context of the shared decision-making tool, and that is a hemophilia-free mind. Being able to go about your business, your work, your school, your social life, whatever it is, without having to constantly think about a concern for bleeding. And so as these new therapies have emerged over the past 10 years or so, they are moving us closer to that. But there's also a fair amount of health inequity in that many of these new therapies are not available to everybody in the world. And so that's a separate issue, but it's something to consider in using this tool for advocacy. The second concept with regard to the tool is really in being able to empower both healthcare providers and patients. And so in that context, I really would like to ask Barb and Sara their perspectives on how they can work with patients who are diverse in their backgrounds, diverse in their thinking, diverse in their priorities. What might enable a better dialogue in using this tool? Barb, do you want to start?
Sure. I think that's a really good question because it has become, I think, almost overwhelming to try to be sure to talk about everything at a clinic visit. We really try on the evaluation visit to go through all of the current treatments and what's available and educate our patients about those opportunities and see what they want to do. But certainly what I find myself doing is talking a lot and the patient not talking very much. And so I think having a platform so that the patient can spend time, some will be able to do that better than others, and we can assist those and work to assist those who don't have the resources to do it as well, so that there's more preparation and education. So there are more questions coming from the patient rather than me just going through everything very quick, to try to get through everything. So I think this really gives that opportunity. And at our center, where I'm just about to present to our team the incorporation of this tool so that when we send the things that for our patients to get ready, that we can also give access to this so that they can come and with more questions, and we can feel like we're doing a better job in terms of sharing with the patient and the rest of the team.
Barb, in a busy center such as the one that you're at, how do you find the time, the resources to incorporate the tool? How do you think that will work?
Well, I think
can be
what
done
we're still
offline?
waiting for everyone to to see it, and I don't make decisions, but everyone's very interested. So I think what we would do is send the link to our patients with a introductory note about it, so that they get other things to for them to fill out in preparation. And I think this would be an important tool that they could use if they want before they come to the visit. And if they don't, then it also could be a tool that they could use after the visit. I could see that we could have a resource at the center where they could use the tool there if they don't have the resource to use it in their home situation or whatever their living situation is.
Okay, thank you. And Sara, with regard to your center in Madrid, how do you think this tool can be incorporated into all of the other things that you're doing?
I think that maybe can be a good idea to work with our patient national and regional association, maybe put these leaflets in the consultation or in the waiting rooms, because I think if you give the power to the clinician to decide, I offer the tool to or not, we are at the same point. I think that you should spread, and then the patient are going to see, okay, this tool, it's not clinician dependent, it's just my interest using this tool. And maybe I think that work with patient association and doing this kind of pilot studies with the WFH, I think that will implement the tool in our daily routines.
Okay, thank you. And Mariette, how do you see what sort of role do you see for the NMO, for the patient organization? How can they assist both the patient as well as the HTC healthcare providers in really maximizing the benefit of shared decision making?
Yes, I think it's very important to really implement it in the care process, and that's gonna be, well, not that easy, but so two centers have said already we would like to test it and together with us, and I think we should do some PR activities via our society, social media, to really spread the word that the tool is out. And really, I think it's very easy accessible, even on a smartphone. You can really use it. You don't need a computer. I think it's it looks great, I think. So in principle, there are not that many barriers for patients, I think, to access it, but we should make it available to patients. For instance, we have an electronic patient diary linked to the registry. There, of course, we could maybe post a link or whatever. And in the Netherlands, in the future, we should have personal health records. We don't know yet how in practice these will be tailored to certain diseases, but this shared decision-making tool should have a place in these kind of tools as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mariette.
Can I just make one follow-up comment? And that is, I know translating something is a big thing, but I think in terms of access, the populations that we're most challenged in discussing with are those where English is, for me, particularly immigrant and refugee populations, to be sure they understand it's a big switch to what's available for their treatment and to understand it. And so it might be interesting to look at kind of what would be the languages where that would be most useful.
Yeah. Well, that would take us into maybe a too much of a tangential kind of a conversation, but I know translation costs a lot of money. And so maybe a question for Donna. Do you see any ability of using artificial intelligence to do these translations in a much less expensive, more rapid kind of way?
Yes, I do. I think that is the future, and not even the future. I think it's now. So there's that, but then there's so that's like the fact sheets. We can easily do that and then have a reviewer, because we would still need a reviewer.
Yeah.
But then there's costs associated with updating the platform itself, which is really where a lot of the costs come from. But yeah, I think AI can be used.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I'm almost doing simultaneous real-time translations now, and so you can imagine how we might incorporate that into our workflow. I want to turn now to another use of this tool that is so important for patients, populations that don't have access to all 5 of the treatment groups that we have put into the tool. And we put all 5 of these in because this is everything possible that is available that's been approved by the FDA, the European Medicines Organization as well. But it's not, they're not available in most of the world, all 5 of these, certainly. And even taking gene therapy out, which is only approved in a few countries now, all 4 of them are not approved in most of the world. And so this is maybe a question for anyone who would like to start to offer some thoughts about this. On the advocacy side, how can we best use this tool to advocate for bringing a new therapy class into a country? And I say this not only for purposes of beginning to allow more and more people to start to experience a hemophilia-free mind kind of approach to their illness, but also we've got this other goal that has been emerging over these last few years as well. The goal of 0 bleeds, no bleeds at all in a year. And it is achievable with some therapies, not achievable with others. But those therapies that it's potentially achievable with are also not available in most of the world. So yet another purpose for advocacy. So what do we think about that? How might healthcare providers, patient advocacy organizations work together to demonstrate the need for getting more of these therapies into their particular country?
Can I speak?
Enrique.
Yeah. I would like to share an example on the first session of this panel. For example, I invited some of the person from my local organization here, and here I'm in Mexico, in a really small state where they only have in this case factor 8 and 9 at demand. And right now their goal is to go for emicizumab. But that's the only thing that they had in mind. But when they were here in the first panel and they learned that they were like different therapies, it was like a great insight for them. Because I mean, in Mexico they are not approved, gene therapy and the other ones, but at least right now they know that they can have emicizumab and they can fight for that. But they also know that there are other treatment options that they could try and they could go for them. So that's interesting, but because sometimes even you are a part of your local organization, you don't really know, or you only know about popular things, but you don't know like the whole options you have there. So yeah, like having these kind of tools and going with them, they help you to learn more and maybe find out what is more suitable for your situation and for your needs, and then you can start a conversation with the government and with the authorities. And it's not going to be a short way, it's going to take some time, but if you don't have that in mind, you're only going to go for what you know, and you're going to ignore like all the other things. So yeah, that will be my example.
Okay, thank you, Enrique. Sara?
Yeah, I have a question that aroused me to the WFH team that make the tool, because I think that a very good point of the tool also is that you can do the report. I mean, you complete all the answers, and then you have this PDF, this summarize of that you have written. And I assume that is something difficult because you don't have to log in to the app. So the app doesn't store any information. But I think that will be nice to see the evolution of the answers. I mean, for example, today I think this stuff, but maybe the next year I will have another preference, I will have another experience, change happen. And I think that will be so nice to see the comparison. The first thing that I used the tool, I thought this, and the second, I thought that. So to see the evolution. Not sure if you have think about this or just to know your opinion.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. So, is there any plan, Donna, for us to be able to actually demonstrate the usefulness or the utility of this tool in a large number of patients, 50 patients, 100 patients, to show some outcomes?
So I can talk a little bit about what we've done, and I think it would be great to expand what we did to a larger group. So we had a in-person training on on shared decision making in Colombia, where we had 35 patients, healthcare providers, and some government officials. So there was a group of 35 people from 11 different countries. And the training was built very similar to the webinars in that the first part was on training on all 5 treatment options, on the administration of the mechanism of action of each of them. The second part was on the safety of each of the treatment classes. The third part was on the efficacy of the treatment classes. And then we went into the shared decision-making tool. So what we did with the audience was we polled the audience at the beginning and then after the first session on administration, like how many infusions, etc. After the second, once they learned about the safety, and then after the third, once they learned about the efficacy. So it was the knowledge base was building as we went through the training. And we asked them the exact same question after each one. So the scenario for the question was that they were to put themselves in the place of a patient, like a 50-year-old male patient with hemophilia A, who had been on standard half-life on demand their entire life. And now they have access to any treatment they want. Which treatment would they choose for themselves? So we had the beginning. And so, the options were I would stay on demand standard half-life. I would move to prophy, either standard half-life, extended half-life. I would move to bispecific antibodies. I would move to rebalancing, or I would move to gene therapy. So we have the progression over time, and it was really interesting to see how the choices changed as the information was built upon. So at the very beginning, there was a number of people who would have stayed on demand standard half-life. But as they gathered more information, everybody moved to prophylaxis. Some people moved to gene therapy. A lot of people moved to bispecific antibodies. Some people moved to rebalancing. So there is definitely a change with education. So the decision became more and more informed as we went on. So I think it was a really interesting exercise. I would love to expand it to a bigger number of people. We can work on how we could do that, but I think it's a nice demonstration of how education and knowledge can shape a decision.
It might be something that could be done at a couple or different training sessions and then pool the data. That could be a way of doing it without setting up a study at different treatment centers, which is probably not easily doable.
Yeah.
But that's sort of, that's sort of real life experience with educating and helping make those kinds of decisions for particular patients' lifestyle, I think are important. Any other thoughts about advocacy from our panelists? Mariette?
Yes, thank you, Glenn. I think the icons of the hemophilia, the free mind, I think it would be nice to have a kind of presentation about the, well, all these, what they mean, bleeding risk, joint pain, or just to get a bit of an overview. I don't know, I don't think it's really in the tool presented like a list or so, right? Or maybe a video can be made where they are being introduced. I think they deserve a bit more attention.
Donna, what do you think about that?
I missed the section. I missed the purpose of it. Can you just repeat that section?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm not really, I think it's better to have them one by one presented, since I'm not a really visual person. And now they are a bit small in the tool itself. So it's not easy to navigate, I think, which ones turn green, etc. That's just a technical comment.
The hemophilia free mind.
Yes, the icons or the pictures.
Yeah. So we received a lot of feedback on the hemophilia free mind. Not everybody engages with it well. Some people love it, and other people are like, I'm not sure. So yeah, no, I take your point. It is kind of, well, first it's a concept that you have to really get into it to understand it. And there's a lot of little pieces in there. So we can look at that and see if there's a way to better visualize it.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. The hemophilia free mind in some ways is a little polarizing, but I think that we shouldn't take it literally. It's an aspirational goal to not have to deal with your hemophilia every single day or every hour of every day. And those who have hemophilic arthropathy have a hard time letting go because you're continually reminded of it as you move. But the concept of being worried about bleeding, a little bump here, a little bump there, going down the stairs or up the stairs the wrong way, getting a sharp pain in your ankle. All of those are the sorts of things that could be eliminated if the therapy is protective, is sufficiently protective. And so that's really the concept behind it. It's not literally no longer having hemophilia. That's and never having to think about it again. That's not, but I do think that it's maybe a little bit misunderstood. But it's an aspirational kind of a goal, like zero bleeds. And it's important that we keep pushing. We keep pushing the boundaries and the barriers to achieve higher levels of protection. Barb, do you want to offer a comment on that from a clinician's perspective?
Yeah, I take care of adults with hemophilia, and the points you make are really apt. It's hard to forget that you have joint disease. And so, but also I have patients who say, I don't really think about my hemophilia the way I used to. I don't worry about things I will do and will precipitate a bleed. And so I see that as what I think of as a hemophilia-free mind. Of course, I don't have hemophilia. So, but to not have that as in the forefront of your mind and what you do, and some of the patients may want to comment, is I don't have to have that as my first thought all the time.
Yeah. Garrett and Jay, what do you think about that?
I can speak to the hemophilia-free mind in the sense that I actually think more about it now than ever before, because I get invited to a lot of things like this, which is a great thing, because this is, I'm sitting comfortably in a chair and I'm hopefully helping people, enlighten people from my point of view. The past, for me, hemophilia all the time was about fear and terror with a big black cloud. And I would tend to actually attempt to block it out of my mind until I was actually injured. And then once I'm free from an injury, wouldn't discuss it, wouldn't whatever. So to me, it's the emotional aspect that's changed hugely.
Yeah, for me, I think the hemophilia-free mind is a really big goal for me in terms of quality of life. As someone who uses a standard half-life treatment therapy, I'm always kind of hyper aware of the peaks and troughs, especially when I'm in a trough. I'm often always thinking about where I am in relation to my last infusion. So I have enjoyed pretty good outcomes with severe hemophilia, but that is something I think about all the time. And it's definitely something I am looking to kind of fix with treatment changes in the future. But I can't complain too much because I have good outcomes, but it is something I'm constantly thinking about for sure.
Hazri, what do you think?
It's still at least a progress that we want to achieve in the future, at least in Malaysia, because we are still given extended half-life and still on prophylaxis. But that's something that we want to achieve for the next generation, hemophilia-free mind.
Enrique, any thoughts from the Mexican perspective?
Yeah, well, I will talk a little bit about my perspective. I mean, for me, it really changed when I was using on-demand bypass agents to emicizumab in this case. And I couldn't explain at the beginning what was like the main difference besides the part of the bleedings, but then I understand that having my mind free to do other activities was like a really lot, like a great achievement, because on my mind it was always like thinking that if I had a business meeting, where I'm going to let the car, if that day I'm going to be available to work, if I'm not going to be available to work, when do I have to go to the center to get the treatment? And like a lot of stress in my head thinking about hemophilia. And right now, for example, I mean, right now I'm in a situation where there's a shortage of emicizumab, but besides that, usually I just like, okay, it's going to be on Tuesday. I'm going to be there once a month, and then it's not that I forget about it because I have problems with my ankles and I have some pain, but that's something I know it's there, but it's not going to get into a bleeding, so I can actually do whatever I want. So yeah, when I try to explain this part to my counterparts, to other people with hemophilia, it's like, okay, if you don't have to worry about hemophilia, you can do like a lot of things, not only physically, but also in your mind. You are like stress-free from hemophilia, and that's really amazing for me. So yeah, I hope we can get to that part, because you start worrying about other things in your life, not only about bleedings.
Yeah. Well, some of these new therapies are getting us closer to that. And of course, for some people who have received gene therapy and have gotten sufficiently high therapeutic levels, they are essentially free of having to worry about bleeding. I can speak from my personal experience. I had a liver transplant 15 years ago, and we didn't have the term hemophilia-free mind at that point, but that's exactly what happened. I went from constantly worrying. I was on-demand therapy, intermittent prophylaxis before that, so constantly worried about bleeding, to just being free of having to worry about it. And it's an experience that I would wish for everyone. And with these newer therapies, we are getting closer to that kind of a goal. So I think the use of the shared decision-making tool winds up becoming important for people to begin to appreciate the range of possibilities. And then coming back to advocacy, I do think that this kind of a tool is going to be even more important in making sure that in countries that don't have some of these advanced therapies, that we can get these therapies to them through government purchasing. But we've got to convince the governments to do that. Okay, are there any final thoughts from any of our panelists before we close, or any final questions from our audience?
Just looking, there's a question in the Q&A. I don't know if it was answered. How can healthcare systems effectively incentivize HCPs to prioritize shared decision-making discussions with patients and caregivers amidst competing demands on their time?
Well, Sara, would you like to try to address that question?
Yeah, but maybe my opinion is some kind of controversial here, because I think that as everything in life, it depends the person you have in front of. Sometimes you will have such a cool physician, such a cool nurse. Sometimes you are not going to have that. But the benefit of using this tool is that you can avoid depending on that, because you have your tool with you. So it's not depend the clinician you have in front of. You can go with your thoughts, with your things, with the things that you matter the most, and share with the person. So not sure. I think that maybe if there are any clinician reluctant to use this app, maybe with data this will be better to understand, but not sure. Maybe the exposure, the patient association saying, okay, we want this tool, we want you to use this tool with me, can have also a good measure of pressure and to achieve the outcome that we want, that's to be this implemented in our daily routine.
All right, well, those are some good points. Anything further? Okay, well, I'd like to thank our panelists very much for their participation in these three webinars over the course of the last month and a half. And I'd like to thank our audience as well for their interest in the WFH shared decision-making tool. With that, have a great day, everyone, and talk to you next time.